Good morning, church. God is moving in our community. He's moving in our state. He's moving in our country. And I'm expecting him to move in your hearts further today. I have this really privileged job of being able to work with children and young people all across the state. And I've actually coming up to 10 years working with an organisation called Schools Ministry Group. And I'm really privileged to have spent that much time as a young man in that role, in different roles. And I'm really excited to be talking a little bit about what I've learnt and what actually might be going on for Gen Z. And so my thoughts from today actually come from a situation that happened last year. And I was in front of a class, and the question was asked, who is the Prime Minister of Australia? And in your minds, I'm sure lots of similar answers come to mind. And all the kids put their hands up. This was year ones. Put their hands up quickly, yep. And there's kids, oh, I know. Absolutely. Most of the class are putting their hands up. And I sort of said, okay, yep, you down the front, Mike. And the kid said, King Jong-un. And what didn't happen was the laughter that just happened there. Lots of kids put their hands down and went, oh, yeah. It wasn't any laughter. There was a lot of social cues of, oh, yeah, that's probably right. And for me, that was just okay, what's going on here? You see, in an age of incredible access to information, there is still a really, really strong desire and need for truth. Because that's not true. Incredible access to information. These 6-year-olds have any fact or figure access available to them by just speaking, okay, Google, who's the President of Australia? And normally it would do it, but I've got it on Do Not Disturb. But at any moment we can access any information, but it is truth. That is what is currency. And so we're going to be speaking a little bit about what it looks like for the current generation this morning. And we've been exploring what it is to have Jesus as Lord and to be living under his lordship and his rule. But what does it look like for you? And what does it look like for young disciples of today? Is what we're going to be exploring today, particularly. And so I'm speaking to you if you're 40 and over. This morning, if you're 40 and over, you're old. The world is changing very rapidly, and if you're 40 and over this morning, you're classified as old. If you're a parent in your 30s or 20s and you've got kids or you've got friends or you've got relatives with children, I'm speaking to you because you're a part of this, you're in the midst of this. And if you're younger than that, if you're 20 and younger, I'm trying to see if there's a couple still around. I'm kind of speaking as if I'm a parent and I'm talking to your parents' friends, and it's kind of this awkward conversation because they're talking about you and you're standing there awkwardly. And so this morning, you're the awkward kid who's being talked about. So we're going to be focusing a little bit on Gen Z. And we've got these fancy new projectors this morning. Thank you, Justin, for putting them in yesterday. And I want you to have a look on the screen. This is a bit of a scale of some of the different things and the different generations. And I'll read them out because the letters are a little bit small. So we've got the builders to the far left, and the Model T Ford and rollerblades and the record player are some of the key things from that generation, as well as World War II. And that's if you're 64 and over. So there might be a few builders around in the building today. The baby boomers, that's the Ford Mustang, the Frisbee, and the cassette. And your Walkman, your cassette Walkman. And the moon landing is a really key part for your generation. And you're 55 to 73. Gen X, a few Gen Xers, quite a few in our church. The Commie, the Holden Commodore is the car of your generation. Rubik's Cube and the Walkman, all right? If you're a Gen Y coming along, some of the key words are for shiz, what's up? And you're kind of 25 to 39, and the Toyota Prius is your car, BMX bike, and the iPod. If you're Gen Z, that's what we're going to be focusing a little bit on today. Fam, goat, slay are kind of some of the key phrases, and most of you are just what on earth do all those things mean? The Model S Tesla, the electric car, is the car. The folding scooter and Spotify are the key things. And then if you're Gen Alpha, you're under 10 years old, so that's the children of our church. Autonomous vehicles, the fidget spinner, I'm glad they're gone actually, that fad's over. Smart speakers and Trump and Brexit are the key things from that generation. And we're looking at Gen Z and a little bit of Alpha this morning, but we're sort of faced with a world in which is completely unique to those other generations. The world we live in today has the most diversity across Gen Z. So there's more people from different backgrounds than ever before, and we see that reflected across Australia particularly. But for the first time in history, there's a higher percentage of people from different ethnicities rather than one together. People under sort of 30 years old, sort of 20 to 30, myself, we're more like our parents. So I'm more like my parents and I'm more like my grandparents than anyone else. But for the first time in history, this connected generation, Gen Z, are more like each other globally than they are of the grandparents and the parents in their particular country. And so Australian Gen Zs, African Gen Zs, American Gen Zs, European Gen Zs are more similar together than they are of their particular grandparents. They're so hyper-connected that it's starting to affect the whole culture. And we're seeing more of a global culture and more of a global connection rather than the traditional influence of your elders. And so it's this hyper-connected reality and this hyper-connected world in which the secular life script is standard. And even in our churches, we're going to look at this in detail, even in our churches, the secular life script has become the standard way of living for children and young people. Even if they are attending this church right now, the standard way of life is the secular life script. And what we're seeing through a lot of different research studies and a lot of different evidence is that life script is failing. It's no longer working. And that the children who are part of this church, the children who are not part of this church, are all following the same life script, whether we like it or not. But it is failing, and it's failing miserably. And so there's some hope in that. I'm going to look at that. What is the hope within that for us? And so if you have children for yourself, or if you know of any children, I'm talking to you this morning, because there is a lot that you can be doing, and there's a lot that you can be involved with. If you are a Gen Y, and this will filter down into Gen X and the Alphas, and I hope that I'm a part of this population, but it's about 10% of those people who are in churches are resilient. It's about 10% of young people who are resilient Christians. What do I mean by that? That literally, as soon as one thing comes along that questions their faith or questions their ability to engage with the church, 90% of those people will leave the church and never come back. And so if you look around this church, look around as you leave, look at those people in my age bracket or less, and consider to yourself, how are we doing? Do we have resilient Christians in this community? Because if you're older than us, that's your job. It's not John's job, that's not the new pastor's job, that's our job. And so we're going to be considering what we can be doing today as far as that goes. And so there's this term that's been coined as far as how to explain this dynamic. And it's come from a guy called David, and he's from the Barna Research Group. And so I'm drawing a little bit on Barna Research Group and McCrindle Research, which is an Australian guy today. But they've coined this term called, they are digital, we're in digital Babylon. We're digital exiles. And in the same way that God's people were in exile in a foreign land, with foreign gods, with foreign customs, our generation, our younger generation today, it's as if they are in exile right now. My daughter, who's with my wife right now, it is as if she is in exile today because of the immense influence that social media and the digital native has. A child today, have a think to yourself, how many hours do you think a kid is spending online or on screens at the moment?
6 to 7 minutes.
What was that, sorry?
6 to 7, I reckon.
6 to 7 hours. Of course, you're right, because you're involved in this stuff. But 6 to 7 hours a day in front of a screen. And that's for a primary age child. And so the level of discipleship they are receiving is overwhelmingly from those screens. Their whole worldview is being shaped by that. And they are more in this digital Babylon, this exile, in which they are as if they're in a foreign land with foreign gods and with foreign practices and customs. We have this accelerated and complex culture. It's marked by unlimited access to information. By simply speaking, like I was saying before, you have access to anything. Knowledge, who cares anymore? Facts and figures, who cares? Because we have full and unlimited access to it. And in fact, neuroscience is showing that Gen Zs are forming neural pathways in which when they're received a question, the neural pathways are directing to the hand and the arm to pick up a phone out of the pocket. It's triggering that part of the body because that's becoming how we remember things. We remember things by looking at our phone. But inside of this, we have this profound sense of alienation. And so in this hyper-connected world in which Gen Z, young people are so incredibly connected with anyone, anywhere, there's this profound sense of alienation because of the lack of community and the lack of actual and genuine relationships. So it's hyper-connected. There's so many people, so much access to actually be able to communicate, but there is a significant lack of community, a significant lack of genuine connection. So there's this sense of profound alienation for our Gen Zs. And there's this crisis of authority. Kids used to go to Scouts. Some of you would have gone to Scouts and other things, Boys Brigade and other groups. You were probably part of these big youth groups growing up. If you were part of the church, you're aligned with different sporting clubs and events. But inside of that, there's this crisis of authority because no longer is the current generation being involved in those groups. In fact, there's a level of skepticism towards, well, why would I want to be involved in something like that? There's a level of, I'm not going to commit myself to being a part of a collective or a group. And so what comes from that is this crisis of authority. How do I actually live now? What are morals? Who do I look to actually influence me? Who do I go to actually question these big things that I'm confronted with? There's this crisis of authority. Who actually has authority over me? It's something that you have maybe taken for granted in your life because there's always been those leaders. But now there's this crisis of authority. And so this takes me to the story of David and Goliath. You'll know it. David, a shepherd, a musician, minding his own business over here. And over there, there's a war starting. And this isn't the sort of standard war in which they're fighting each other with huge masses. This is a standoff. And it's a big, giant man. I was curious, actually. I've been curious to know how big this guy was. And apparently they say it's about 7 foot. So you can imagine that's taller than me, right? I'm interested to know how I compare to Goliath. Apparently taller than me. So if you stand next to me after the service, you know that Goliath is even bigger than I. And we have this story where they come, in which there's this giant provoking God's people, Israelites. And where's the king? Where's King Saul in this story? He's off in his castle. He's away from the action. He may be scared. He may be feeling like he's old or irrelevant. He may feel like he can't get his armor on anymore and go to battle. He may feel like he doesn't know what to do. And so the story ends with David, who's the youngest, doesn't have much experience, probably doesn't know what to do himself, stepping in and taking action and taking charge. And he picks those stones up, he confronts Goliath, and he lets his sling go. And in that moment, everything changes forever. King Saul didn't turn up. He didn't show up. The elder, the leader, the king didn't show up. He failed to be present where he should have been. He failed to actually be involved in the thing that he should have been. And so there's this interesting thing that I see in David and that I see in what we're talking about with Gen Z, is that he was successful not because of a position of authority, not because there was some sort of established leadership that he was involved with, and not because he was fearful. He stepped in because he acknowledged that he had one Lord over him, that the one and only God was his Lord, and that he could step in to this moment and take charge and take action. That the giant, in all of his strength and all of his overwhelming presence, didn't actually have the power that we thought it did. That in actual fact, Goliath was not powerful when met with the strength of the Lord. That in fact, David was strong because of the strength that he was given. And that Saul, with all of the qualifications he had to solve the problem, didn't show up. He didn't participate. So my question for you today is, are you Saul or are you David? Forget about age. Forget about where you rank in the generations. Are you Saul or are you David? Are you in your home, mortgage paid off, at your beach house, relaxing? Are you in the comfort? Maybe you feel like, how am I relevant to Gen Z? How am I relevant? Doesn't matter how old you are. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's overwhelming the amount of change that's going on for you. Maybe you look at my phone right now and you think, I could never use that even, so how can I be relevant? Maybe you're unsure about what Bitcoin is. Maybe you're unsure about what Uber is or how to use Instagram. None of that matters. Don't let those sort of factors, don't let the dynamic of change prevent you from showing up and taking action. Or are you David? Can you turn up and fire a sling? Can you trust in the power of the Lord and turn up and fire a sling? You see, the giant that we're faced with at the moment is this idea of secularism, is this idea of overwhelming influence from screens, is this idea that Generation Z are more connected than ever before. That's the giant. But the reality is when it's confronted with the power of the Lord, it is nothing. And that you can fire a sling, that you can pick up a rock, and you can do something in this space. And so there's some significant needs that Gen Z have. And if you're taking notes this morning, definitely write these down. But the number one being searching for identity. That in a culture and a society in which we're not connected to anything, which we don't commit to a whole lot, there is a searching for who I am. And so if you see a 10-year-old walking through our church, if you see a 20-year-old, if you see our group of young adults and teenagers, they are searching for identity. Don't think that just because they're here on a Sunday means they know who they are. They are a part of this exile. They are a part of this confusing space, and that they don't actually potentially know who they are. They're searching for identity. In a world in which we are overwhelmed with information, in which we have unlimited access to whatever we need, Gen Z are fighting anxiety. It's an anxious place to be because of the overwhelming number of possibilities and the low level of guidance that they're receiving. They are overwhelmed with anxiety. there's an experience of loneliness, and we've all been there. We can all relate to that feeling of loneliness. But imagine feeling like you are connected superficially to everyone in the world, but having no one that you are genuinely connected to. This is the experience of Gen Z. There's an overwhelming sense of loneliness. How to harness ambition. So what we're going to see with Gen Z, and the researchers tell us that they're going to be more focused on careers and ambition than ever. With more kids going to university when they leave school, more students feeling the stress of academic pressure to succeed and commit to a career, we're going to see more young people committed to their long-term careers and ambitions than ever before. And so there's this question of, well, how do I harness this ambition when I'm feeling like I don't know who I are, when I'm anxious, and when I feel like I'm not actually connected to anyone? How do I harness this sense of ambition that I have? And I think a lot of it is the Lord stirring this sense that actually something isn't quite right. So how do I harness ambition? And then the feeling of entitlement. A few head nods there, because you're all like, yeah, entitled young people. But this is more because of the lack of guidance and direction that they have. That they actually feel like they should be more than they are because they see this wonderful world in the digital space that they're actually not having for themselves. And the reality is that Instagram, Facebook, that all these stories that we see are just lies. They're just orchestrated. They're not true. And so there's this feeling of entitlement of like, well, I should get that. I should have that life. I should have what's going on for that person that I see. But it's all fake. It's all false. It's all a lie. And so there's this feeling of entitlement. It's a genuine feeling of entitlement that I should actually have more than I do. And so for you, as you're sitting there right now, this is really strong call to action. Because the future success of our church, of Enfield Baptist, the church in Australia, is an emotionally connected church in an anxious age. This is Mark Sayers says this. An emotionally connected church in an anxious age. And so this isn't a church that may have, but maybe it's not going to be a success, of programs, of youth groups. It's you people out there being emotionally connected to Gen Z, to the young people of our congregation, of the young people in your families, to have genuine connection with them, to genuinely seek them out, ask them how they're going, and how you can participate in their lives. Just because you're older doesn't mean that you're not relevant to them. They actually need you more than ever before. I need you more than ever before. Sarah needs you more than ever before. We need all of you more than ever before. We need you to be emotionally connected to us. Because the world is this big, changing place. And we need your wisdom and guidance, but it actually comes from you. And this is a significant development. That young people aren't going to naturally be like you. It's just how it is. Unless you take a sling. Unless you do something about it. Don't be like Saul. Don't be off in your comfort. We actually need you more than ever. And I think that God is stirring this incredible movement, this incredible opportunity for Gen Z to be influenced. I strongly believe that with the thousands of kids that I've stood in front of and that I've worked with, that you people and the people that are outside of our church, but that you people can make this incredible difference. If you take this on board, that if you make genuine connections with the young people in your lives, whether you're a grandparent, whether you're an uncle or an auntie, whether you have kids of yourself, we need genuine connection with you. We crave it. And that's me, and I've been here, let alone all those kids out there who are going to be growing up without that naturally at Enfield Baptist. And so there's this huge need for you to be emotionally connected, to actually step out and be a part of our lives. So fire that sling, do something about it, allow the Lord, trust in the Lord to be able to actually do something in your life. It doesn't matter if you don't know, it doesn't matter if you feel like you're irrelevant or old, it doesn't matter where you stand in life, because God's got this, and He's stirring this up. He's stirring something in our country, and I think that you can be a part of it. All you need to do is turn up. All you need to do is step forward. All you need to do isn't just try and engage. Don't worry about the fear that you might have of being irrelevant. You can do it. You can actually step forward. You can fire a sling. And so one of the biggest things, I think, and biggest opportunities for the future, and Barna Group look at this on a big scale. They did a study of Australia, New Zealand, and their primary stuff's in the United States. But if you are to genuinely impact Gen Z with the gospel, with the love of Christ, to do that, the best way forward is to focus on their careers. This idea of vocational discipleship. I can't remember if I've got a slide up about that or not. This idea of vocational discipleship. And so focusing on what their ambitions are, focusing on what their careers might look like. And so right now, if you're feeling like, well, what do I actually do? What do I talk about? Talk about what their dreams and hope for the future are. We're going to step into a space more where vocational discipleship is going to be one of the most important things, I think, as far as fostering disciples and fostering young people in the way of Christ. And so right now, that's my advice to you. Go and talk to young people about their future, their dreams, their ambitions, and do it in a really genuine and emotionally connected way. But beyond that, show interest and care. That's what we need. That's what they need more than ever. And I know that you can do it. You don't need to set up a big program or anything to engage. Just the young people that are around you already. I'd love to pray. The service is almost at an end, and just have some music if that's all right. And if you're able to, don't run off. I'd love you to pray together. Last time I preached, I thought that was a really powerful time. And so if there's people around you, I'd love you to stay, and as there's some music being played, I would love you to pray together. But pray for yourselves. Pray for the energy and the passion and the direction of the Lord to show you what it looks like to engage with this generation, what it looks like to engage with Gen Z. Pray for that. Pray for conviction in your heart. Pray for each other that might happen, because there is an incredible opportunity and incredible need. And I know that we are amazingly positioned to do that. And so you're welcome to sing along to the last song, or you're very welcome to get together and pray with the people around you, or seek someone else out. It doesn't matter. Love to pray with you as well as we finish off. But yeah, I hope that you can. I hope that you can engage with some prayer before you leave today. So let me pray to finish this off. Heavenly Father, we are so thankful and so enthusiastic about the children in our country. We're so enthusiastic about Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And I pray that you would direct and guide us on how to create this emotionally aware and emotionally connected church. That we would be able to be vulnerable, that we would be able to step forward, that we'd be able to trust that you'll give us the tools, that you'll give us the resources, that all we need to do is pick those stones up and fire a sling. I pray that we would take seriously that call of turning up, showing up for Gen Z. That for the kids in our church right now, in our community, and the children outside of that we would allow your work and your spirit to do something in us, to shake us up a little bit if we need it, and to take charge. I pray an incredible blessing over the people here today, over your church. I pray that your Spirit would move strongly in people's lives this week. That they would hear your voice and that they would take seriously this call to live as if you are Jesus, Lord of all. Amen.